So if you could just share one of the key issues or challenges your table is discussing, some of the action that needs to happen, and the partners that will be involved, and how it relates to SMC's Shared Vision 2025.
Tess.
Okay, Marta Bookbinder with table number 1. Yay! Okay, the challenge here, we agree that the system that is not always welcoming is a challenge. Oh, do you laugh about it? We have 2 tables on this now. Number 1, how your organization addressing this challenge? Well, we felt that we need to have negotiation between the funders and the community at a community level. Be transparent and open, and as proud as what? As provider take issues
to higher levels, manage. Take the issues to the higher level.
Take the issues to the higher level. That means that the negotiation needs to start locally and then go all the way to the highest decision-making level, so that you can then highlight for them all the benefits. Everything is based on a benefit. Well, how will this benefit everyone in the community? Number 2, what additional action is needed? Potential partners. One of the members in our tables felt that alliances between youth and partners would be like an alliance from a youth organization with a sheriff's office, so that they can see each other as part of a coexistent system that can really do things together. Another one is Immigrant, to have people really get engaged with the Immigrant Museum, or showcasing of an immigrant through the different venues like art or culture, and to honor the immigrants that way. Highlight the successes of all individuals at all levels. So like we mentioned that we have all those nice cards and all these immigrants in each table, and everybody there is somebody who is known. But how about in each community, all those people who are also heroes or who also contribute, volunteers? Why not highlight them too? So that those children or youth in the local levels can look up to their own little community great heroes or leaders for them. So this is what this meant. Recognize and honor that the stories more often than not are just maybe of more value if they are local stories. Instead of just a grand story, it's just what is happening in the community that makes it a great story. And convening the leaders with the community. That's very important because they need to face each other to know, like the speaker said, well, if you bring us the issues, some people like myself, we will be really sympathetic to hearing it. But when you talk about global immigration, we can't hear that. It's too much. So keep it local so that it means a lot to people. So the next page, and we're almost finished. Connecting to the shared vision. We felt that these things connect in the aspect of creating a healthy community. Education is pivotal in making the change for all of it, everybody to grow together, to get prepared together, to add music and the arts that is now so much diminished through the school system, and obviously the museum will be part of the arts. To have prosperity is the second one. There's a prosperous community, because if we emphasize this model, we will be growing from within, from the local to the bigger. And the last one benefit will be that the entire community will be prosperous and benefit as you create from the children to the college and university, people who are prepared for the workforce, for the jobs, and perhaps we will be able to offer that to our local students from our own place. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha, and Table 1. Our next volunteer?
Hello, we're group number 2, I suppose. What we identified as one of the biggest challenges in the county right now is transportation accessibility to services, and and for people understanding how it works, getting from A to B. And I've worked for the county now for 12 years, and during these 12 years, services have changed places. And our bus stops or routes have not changed. And maybe 10 years ago, it was on the same route where people could get off and get to those services, and now they're not. Like, for instance, Four Cs and Legal Aid is on the other side of 101, and that I know of, there's no buses that go that way. So our action plan would be actually doing a survey or a mapping of the current bus routes, and figuring out where each of the services that our clients and residents go to, and see if there's any way that we can reroute them to help clients get to their services easier. Because I see there's a hub, I don't know if it's, like for instance, on Industrial Road, we have VRS, we have, there's Voices of Recovery, there's Clubhouse, there's Heart and Soul, there's a telecare, there's a whole hub where many of our clients go to or need to get to, and the bus stop is Camino Real in Harbor, and many cannot walk, 5 or 6 or 10 blocks to get to the service. So that would be our action plan, and to figure out ways to reroute the buses. And this would fit into our Vision 25, because it would help us have a more livable community and collaborative for both, for our clients and for us as providers. So that was okay? All right, that's it. Oh, good.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer with the County of San Mateo. Everyone in our group was representing a local government agency, so our conversation was centered around that sector. We identified 7 challenges, the first being lack of time. A lot of immigrants need to work several jobs to get by. Therefore, just having time to participate in our events can be a challenge. Second, simply not being used to participating in local government and not knowing how to get started with getting involved in civic engagement opportunities. The third was language barriers, and that goes both ways. Our communities not being able to speak the languages that governments use, and also not having enough government employees who can speak the languages that our communities are comfortable with. The fourth is a lack of trust with law enforcement. Fifth, undocumented status, not being able to qualify for healthcare and other programs. The sixth was not knowing the best ways to get information out into immigrant communities and not knowing what information is most relevant to them. And lastly, mental health issues. We know that a lot of immigrant populations struggle with stress, depression, addiction, and other mental health issues. We talked about some of the ways that we're already addressing these issues within our organization, so doing things like going out into the communities, meeting people where they're at, providing translation, hiring bilingual staff, also providing pro bono legal services, creating safe environments where people feel comfortable speaking to law enforcement officials or other local government officials. And also talking a lot about how education can be a form of empowerment for immigrant communities. And lastly, we talked about what action can be taken and what potential partnerships can be made to address these issues. The first was cities and counties dedicating more funding towards supporting immigrant communities, and that can be in the form of providing more free legal services or supporting other agencies that are helping immigrants. Second, providing more opportunities like this to have these types of conversations around immigrant issues, and not just for people who are already interested in this topic, but how do we get everyone to the table, whether that be mandatory employee trainings around immigrant issues or hosting more conferences like this. And for people who are already working with immigrants, I think a lot of us were inspired by the speakers who talked about how immigrant populations are changing and how do we start to redefine what those narratives are. And lastly, partnering with more businesses and folks from the private sector to examine their practices and how they're supporting immigrant employees and their families.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay. All right, so we focused on a number of challenges. We had a very diverse group of people representing different governments and nonprofits and other experiences. And so we talked about, which I think everyone can agree on, is the lack of resources, challenges in being able to refer people to the right organizations for what they're looking for, a fear of law enforcement. A lot of Americans right now are going through a fear of law enforcement, so you know, how does that translate into our immigrant community as well? The ability to integrate stories from all the great stories that we're hearing and being able to communicate that language, the fear of accessing resources. I think some other groups have talked about this. The legal service capacity, engaging business. The transportation one that you guys went in depth, I think really got to what we were talking about as well, so appreciate the next layer of detail on that. Coordination among groups, so that we know what each of us are doing and figure out ways to collaborate, leveraging best practice. And then a big one, especially with this year's election, is the messaging and making sure that our immigrants do feel welcome and we're actually able to communicate that this community is open to them. In terms of action, I think the state is going to be doing a website in mid of 2017, putting together all the resources available across the states. The New Americans campaign is trying to do more broader outreach through cities and welcoming communities and bringing citizenship services out into the community via larger events. And then do you want to talk a little bit about Libre? Because I couldn't remember this.
Libre it's an initiative in San Mateo County to link immigrants to benefits, resources, and education. And oh, there you are, Hope. So you'll probably talk about it more, but it's managed by Legal Aid.
And then in terms of connecting this to Vision 2025, again, the messaging piece and being able to integrate it with the overall vision for San Mateo County partnerships and showing that we're actually being able to bring everybody into the conversation.
So my name is Ileana, and I had a group of government agencies, really awesome people. So we went over some of the issues first that they have identified, and a lot of them are very similar, which is good because then we're at a general consensus that some of the issues are very similar. So one of them was language, and what we mean by that is a lot of the people that work for these agencies don't have interpretation services or don't know the language, like Spanish, or sometimes not just Spanish. They have they see clients with multiple dialects and languages. And then another one is time restrictions. And what we meant by this is hours of operation don't match with families' work hours. So a lot of the times the agencies are open, let's say from 9 to 5, and the families are barely getting off work, but literally have time to only go feed their children. By that time, they're already going into another job to be able to make ends meet. So this is the one where we had the most trouble finding like action ones, because a lot of things fall into play when we talk about being more flexible with our hours, because that's still an issue. It's not necessarily the flexibility of the hours, it's many more things than just that. And then the last one was isolation and the fear-based. They won't ask for help when needed. So it's part of like the law enforcement fears, and just not wanting to ask for help. A lot of our families also don't want to ask for help because, like, let's say it's a person who works, has a job, but they have a fear of applying for food stamps or applying for Medi-Cal or whatever it is that they need, or seeking their agencies, help from agencies, because they're thinking, oh, somebody else will, that has less than I do, will need it, and I don't want to go and take, time or from other people, resources from other people that might need it more than I do, when they are the people who need it the most, right? So that's one of the issues. And then a lot of stigmas. Did you want to share what you meant by stigma?
All right. What I meant when I said stigma is even within a family or a culture, there's sometimes hesitancy to admit that there is an issue that they cannot handle within the family, or like for us, we deal with mental health clients, and many times the parent, usually, or grandparent, whoever the guardian is, comes from a culture that rarely does talk about mental health issues, or it's shunned. They just want to like ignore it, or they basically make the client handle it on their own. So they don't really invite us in the house. They become embarrassed. They don't want their neighbors to know. There's just a lot of hesitancy and fear due to lack of education, and we all discussed how education was like one of the main things that can help, but because of the fear and the stigma, it's not really built into families, certain families, or methods to handle such fear. That's what I meant.
So really quickly for the action, for language, fire and police, we had a gentleman who represents the fire, right? The fire and police department would need community support to help volunteer. So we came up with this idea where maybe to build some sort of trust is to have the community and community agencies come and partner with the fire department, the police department, to build some sort of trust and create, for the isolation one, be more present, like as, government agencies be more present at community events, community gatherings, whatever it may be. Partner with faith-based organizations, agencies, churches. And one big one was create culturally sensitive material, and then partner with community organizations. So what I meant by culturally sensitive material, I don't know if you've seen this, I see it all the time, where there's like pamphlets, posters, whatever it is in English, and they attempt to translate it, right? But they just stick it into Google Translate, and then they print out that translation or whatever, that flyer. And that is so rude. I feel like it's so rude to our communities because of the reason that you're literally not taking the time to translate it and have the community looks at that pamphlet or that poster and it's like, oh, they totally don't care about us. It's literally, it goes back to that detail of knowing that that agency really cares about these communities and taking the time to partner with other organizations to proofread these materials before actually putting them out into the community. That's one of the things I've noticed, and I told them, you know, maybe partnering with community organizations that know about like the culturally sensitive language that our immigrant communities can really relate to. Not everything should be, Google Translate helps, but you should not be doing that as community agencies. Hint. So that's it.
Thank you. So we've got 2 more groups, right?
Okay, so our table was populated by mostly nonprofits, a few community residents, and some labor organization. And we agreed with most of the challenges that have already been mentioned and discussed, but the main ones that we focused in on were the language issues and how we're a very diverse community, and not only in diversity of countries, but also disparities in the language ability. So people who are more educated to the people who are less educated, even in their native language, might not be able to read. And so that just to say that for every agency that's trying to provide resources and assistance to these communities, we have limited resources. We don't have the capacity to address every language that exists in this county, from a couple Tigrini clients that we've served to the Spanish-speaking clients and the Tagalog and all of that. And so we're facing limited resources, and that most nonprofits are competing with other nonprofits for dollars to staff their agencies. And so those were the challenges that we saw in trying to serve our community. And so what were the action items that we were suggested? The main one was that the county should look for more opportunities to support connecting the individuals to the nonprofits, so that the nonprofits themselves don't have to spend as much of their own limited resources doing the outreach to connect to the community. If the communities are coming out to the Human Services Agency and they need ESL classes, they should be able to refer them to the different nonprofit agencies in the community that are providing those kinds of services. So we're looking to the Office of Immigrant Support and Coordination to build off of the momentum that they've built today to connect the communities to our nonprofits and to our organizations that are already doing good work but have limited resources, so we can spend more time doing our programming rather than more time doing outreach as individual organizations, and creating more opportunities for collaborations like our Libre collaboration, so that we're not fighting over resources but sharing resources to have a bigger impact in our community. So we're excited to see that this summit started, and we're hoping to see it build off of it and really work with the county and government agencies to incorporate the nonprofit work so that the community knows about the great work that's already out there, so we can leverage our community resources in the best way possible.
Hi, my name is Maggie, and our group of table was a group of mostly nonprofit organizations. And what we talked about, the main priorities, like many of you have already said, it's language barriers. They want to be able to overcome that language barrier, which kind of relates to the action and the Vision 2025. And also, they want to make sure that people's basic needs are met, just because if there's like not a solution for housing or food or health, it's kind of difficult to move forward and move closer to getting a solution to these kind of problems. So that's why meeting the basic needs is probably one of the top priorities. And the actions that they're going to take is simplifying like resources, and also like hiring people that can understand like the struggles and the challenges, and that way it's easier for people to go into these organizations and ask for help, because they see that people either speak Spanish or understand where they're coming from, and it becomes less intimidating to go to places like that. Also, part of the vision of the 2025 vision will obviously it's overcoming the language barrier, which relates to everything from like translating to hiring people that speak the language, and not just Spanish, but other languages, and that are more flexible in understanding others. And also having a better simplified understanding of what is out there. Sometimes these resources are kind of hard to understand for families or those who need it, because it kind of becomes complicated. You have to dial certain numbers to get to a person. So simplifying all of that, making it a little bit more accessible and easier for people, it'll probably help a lot more, and the word will start spreading, and also improve in the outreach, which relates to everything else that we just said. Do you guys want to add anything? Okay. Do you want to add?
Basically, we discussed that ultimately it's about making people happy, all people who live in our communities, in connecting with others and engaging in dialogues on how we can improve our communities and our lives. So basically, instead of building walls, connecting with others. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys all for sharing and sticking it out for the whole day. I appreciate it. I want to thank you for your time of being here and being involved in our collaborative community, and specifically in your participation for this breakout session. We'll use what you have presented today to help inform and steer the office's journey in better serving immigrants in our community. So can I have all the volunteers kind of come up to the front so everyone knows who you are? Volunteers at the tables. Jennifer, Kat, Rosalind, all of you. So without all of their help in terms of helping set up the event yesterday, putting chairs together, tables, facilitating at your tables, running around, pretty much doing anything Irving and I were freaking out about, we want to say thank you so much for their support and work. Now, lastly, if you guys don't mind helping me welcome one last time Supervisor Slocum for final comments of the day. Again, thank you everyone for being here, sticking it out the whole day. Hopefully you guys are having full tummies and your brains are engaged. So thank you.
Where is everybody? You were going to get them right here. Is that it? That's it. All right, we're going to throw a curveball to Peninsula TV. As you can clearly see, the two cameras are right above me. Let's see you film this, Penn TV. But there it is. We're going to do it on an iPhone. But Peninsula Television, would you please stand up and be recognized? You're already standing, but let's give it up for Peninsula Television. Master. So we came together today with the objective of having a community conversation about immigrant integration, and I think we achieved that objective. Thank you all very much for that. And then we shared a little food. How was that chicken? It was good? That's all right? Okay. And there was eggplant there. It was a wide variety. It was really pretty good. Thank you. But most important, these three people, plus their colleague Andres Connell, who had to leave, are really the ones that put this program together and deserve all the credit and recognition for this day's event. And, there are 1,001 details that come up at the last second that you hadn't anticipated. For instance, last night at 8 o'clock, Irving texted us and said, can we find 14 easels for tomorrow? I was like, sure, Irving, we can do that. And so you see all the easels, right? They appeared. In any case, let's thank this committee who really put this day together. Also want to thank all the elected officials, Steve from Foster City, retired now from the council, Rob Solano from the fire district, Mayor Rutherford was here. No, I couldn't remember the city. Rick Bonilla from San Mateo. And there were others who joined us, so thank you all for coming. Hopefully, we leave here today with a couple of ideas planted in our heads as well as our hearts about things that we might do in our communities. Even on the fire board, I'm sure there are things that could be done. And if we could just take those ideas and give them some thought. I'm not sure what exactly the plan is for the future. If the committee is up for year 2, probably today's not the day to ask, but hopefully we can continue this conversation. And finally, just thank you once again, you all, for coming. You made this day great, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Vida eu vou te amar, a cada despedida eu